All right, welcome to Keeping It Real, the largest podcast made by real estate agents and for real estate agents. My name is DJ Paris. I'm your guide and host through the show. And I'm very excited about today's episode because we're having a guest that we used to have on all the time, and then they're back, and we couldn't be more excited to talk to Zillow, Amanda Pendleton specifically from Zillow, about all of the cool stuff that they know that agents maybe don't yet know. And we're going to help guide you through some of that information so you can be more effective with your clients. Let me tell you more about Amanda. So Amanda Pendleton is Zillow's house trends expert. Her practical data-driven advice on real estate, renovations, and design has been featured, listen to this is truly amazing, on the Today Show, on CBS Sunday Morning, New York Times, Real Simple, and on Glamour. So Amanda translates Zillow's housing market data into actionable advice for homeowners, buyers, sellers, and renters. She directs research that helps people make smarter decisions about where and how they live, from the color they should paint their bathroom walls to the features that can increase their home's value. Amanda, by the way, is also an Emmy award-winning storyteller and former television personality who spent more than 15 years as a major market news anchor. She is passionate about renovating and restoring historic homes with design projects published in Apartment Therapy, Seattle Magazine, and Boston Home Magazine. Amanda, welcome to Keeping It Real.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks, DJ.
I am super excited to talk to you. And I really believe that probably nobody has more information on home buyers and sellers than Zillow. I remember I was at a Zillow event years ago, and this was just one of the sort of throwaway data points that was mentioned. It was brilliant that I wouldn't have known, where they were saying, our data scientists have all this information that you probably just wouldn't think of. Like, for example, if you show white linens on your bed or white bedspread, it has a 30% higher sort of, engagement rate. And I was like, that's amazing. So if I'm an agent and I'm doing photos for a listing, I would probably keep a white duvet in my trunk. Like, that's something that I just would never know, right? So I love the fact that you guys know things like this, and you don't just know things like that, but it's amazing that there is this information and it can really help agents, be more effective.
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of people don't know that Zillow has data scientists and economists and population scientists and behavioral scientists. And what's great about my job is that I get to work with all of them, which is exciting if you're a huge data nerd, which I am. But what's also neat is that Zillow conducts the largest, most comprehensive survey of more than 60,000 buyers, sellers, renters, and prospective buyers every single year. This is the largest private survey of its kind. And the reason that we do this is because we know economic data is great, right? We love that. We got plenty of that. But here's the thing, and DJ, you know this, your listeners know this, buyers and sellers are not rational, right? And so they often act in ways that the economic models probably wouldn't predict them to act. So this kind of survey data really helps us better understand the market and what makes buyers and sellers tick. So it informs a lot of our business decisions at Zillow, and we freely share it with agents because we want to help them build and grow their businesses too.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely right on, and really excited to have you here. So let's dive right into it. I know we wanted to talk about buyer loyalty, so let's talk about
it. So what really stood out in our survey data this year is, a number of things. In terms of buyer loyalty, the first thing is that repeat buyers are number one back in the market. They now represent 55% of all buyers, which is a majority. And that wasn't the case about a year and a half ago. These are homeowners who had been sitting on the sidelines for the past several years. They were waiting for rates to fall. They've gone through the 5 stages of grief, mourning the loss of that 3% mortgage, right? Yeah. They've accepted, okay, those rates aren't coming back. They're finally listing their homes for sale at the highest rates we've seen since 2019. And a lot of them need somewhere to go. So repeat buyers are back in the market, but they're coming back different. they're not necessarily running back to their former agent who helped them the first time around.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know the National Association of Realtors shows every so many years they do this survey, and it's like 74% of home buyers and sellers would say they would use their agent again that they used previously. However, only like 14% actually do. So this is really a wonderful sort of reminder to our agents that people forget about you, and here's some ways not to obviously have them forget about you.
Yeah, and we actually have similar data, and I'll kind of walk you through it if you just kind of bear with me here. When we asked recent buyers, so people who just bought their home, they just got their keys, they're just moving into their new house, would you work with the same agent again in the future? 79% of them said, yes, absolutely. We loved our agent. Of course, we'd work with them again. Well, then, what happens? Time goes by, and our data shows that it's usually 14 years. That's
Yeah.
usually how long homeowners are in their homes before they sell again. So 14 years go by, and only 13% of repeat buyers say that they would hire the same, or that they found their agent through past experience, right? So that's a huge gap. 79% of people said, yes, of course I'd hire my agent again. 13% actually do. And there's a lot of reasons to explain that gap away, right? Maybe they moved to a different city or neighborhood. Of course, they need a different agent. Maybe their former agent retired or got out of the industry. Maybe it's been 14 years and they just forgot who they used the first time around, right? But it doesn't explain away every single buyer. There's still a significant share of repeat buyers who are simply deciding that another agent is going to be a better fit for their needs. And this is not a reflection on an agent's performance, right? Even if your client had a wonderful experience with you, their lives have changed. Maybe you helped them get into a condo in the city and now they're looking for a 4-bedroom in the suburbs, right? They're looking for something different in their home and maybe something different in their agent.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think it also highlights the gap between, or an opportunity rather, that agents really need to consider, which is the old adage, out of sight, out of mind, right? We love to think that people remember us, that we're so important to them, and we had such a wonderful experience that 14 years later, of course, they're going to give us a call. But if we're not continually priming that pump, if we're not reaching out, if we're not proving to them over those next 14 years that we still care about them, we still are interested in their lives, we are checking in, we are asking them what's going on in their lives so that we know about these life events that may precipitate a move, they are going to look elsewhere, because we know for sure they're going on Zillow, right? And they are going to go on Zillow and they're going to look for homes on their own. They do not need an agent to do that. And they might just say, you know what? Let's see what other agents are out there.
Yeah, I think, for an agent, this really means loyalty cannot be assumed, right?
Yeah.
Um, Repeat buyers are shopping around. In fact, we know that nearly half of repeat buyers, 46%, spoke to 2 or more agents before they made their choice. So even if they are calling you, they may
Mm,
be calling someone else as well. And I think, you hit on it, right? Agents need re-engagement strategies. We know there's a lot that work as long as they are authentic. And I'm sure your listeners are really well versed in all these things, but we're talking about that regular market update email, right? That's tailored to their neighborhood. We're talking about checking in on those milestones. Maybe it's been a year since their purchase or their birthday's coming up. It's staying digitally visible, right? Maintaining that active social media presence, keeping all your online profiles updated. But I think most importantly, these communications have to feel authentic and they also have to add value, right?
mhm.
Can't just check in for the sake of checking in.
Right.
Can you provide some helpful resources? Maybe it's a phone call that's, hey, I know you were thinking about making that kitchen renovation or getting started on that construction project. My other client just had a great experience with their contractor. I would be happy to connect you. Can I send along an email? Something like that, right? You're adding value to that conversation. And that's what really keeps you top of mind as a trusted advisor and not just, as a pest.
One of my favorite people in this business is a local agent here, and her name is Amy. She's a Compass agent, and what she's been top 1% producer for, I don't know, 15 plus years. And I asked her, I said, what do you do every day? Because I'm always curious. I don't produce myself, so I'm always curious what top agents actually do day to day. And I expected her to give a standard answer, which a lot of agents give, which is like, my days are always really different. There's so much happening. It really, I can't give you a similar date. She said, I actually have kind of the same day every day. Or at least half of my day is the same. And she said from 8 until noon, or maybe it was 9 until noon, she goes, I literally go to my phone, I go to my contact list, which all my clients and my sphere is in there, and I just start dialing. What's interesting is she says, I have about 5 or 6 reasons I might call somebody, but the one that is the most successful is kind of what you touched on, which is she said, hey, just checking in. I was curious, do you have any home projects that you've either not finished or not started, right? Because I just moved into this place and we have a ton of projects that we've started and we have a ton more that we need to do. And so everybody's got that who, has a home. So it's a brilliant question because the answer is always yes. And then she says, well, tell me about it. What's the project? And then they'll tell them and they'll tell her and she'll say, great, give me a few minutes. If she might know somebody right off the spot who can fix it or help start the project or finish it. Or she'll say, give me a day or two on this. I want to go to my database of, I know the best people that can work on this. I'll get back to you. And again, it's like, that's brilliant because it's maybe just the push that person needs, number one, to get the project completed, but it's a really helpful resource. So I love that strategy. I think that's brilliant.
Right. Yeah. No, I've heard stories too about agents saying, they'll call up a client and say, hey, I just drove by, Dan's Donuts. I thought of you. I know it's your favorite place, right? Maybe they didn't drive by Dan's Donuts, but, it's reminding the client, I'm thinking about you. I remembered you. You're top of mind, little things like that, making it personal, making it authentic. I think that's what works.
Yeah, it's the one thing AI cannot do yet, and maybe hopefully
Right.
never, but certainly not yet. It cannot replace I was driving by Dan's Donuts, and I know that's your favorite place, and I'm thinking about you. And by the way, how are the kids doing? And,
Right.
all of the interpersonal stuff that is really ultimately most important because it speaks to intimacy. It speaks to care. Like, I care about you. I actually think about you. And it's funny because we're not necessarily talking about real estate. Another reason to call somebody, which is also something you mentioned, is to give an updated CMA or in the Zillow terms as estimate, right? Like, everybody is looking up their estimate, whether agents believe that or not, they are. Everybody knows their estimate, or at least they're looking it up occasionally. What I would do if I were a practicing agent, and I would call and say, oh my gosh, I was just checking out your estimate. Zillow thinks your home is worth like X, whatever. I actually want to also run my own personal analysis just to see if it matches up, because I really know this market really well, and I'm curious if our data matches up. I'm going to go ahead and do that for you and send that over to you, right? Like, another great reason to reach out. This estimate, I think, is one of the best ways to reconnect with people because everybody's looking at it.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. I love that strategy. And I think also just, reaching out with reassurance. People
Yeah.
read headlines, right? They're seeing a national story, a national market that may be very different from what's happening in their particular neighborhood. And an agent, as that trusted expert, can say, hey, you may be seeing this, but here's what's really happening in your neighborhood. We're seeing homes sell 10 days faster than the national average or whatever it is, right? So some kind of reassurance that, like, your home value is still strong. We still think that we're going to be able to sell your home if you're interested in that, and we can help you get into a new one.
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about this. You know who doesn't call me with things like that? My accountant, my financial advisor, my who else? My attorneys. Like, I really don't get my insurance agent. I don't. And again, I love all these people. Like, I'm in no way speaking pejoratively to them. I really, truly, I have a great team. But they're not really doing that. Maybe they don't have to, and I'm not suggesting that they should, but real estate agents have this opportunity that other service professionals don't. And it really, like, it would be kind of weird if my accountant called me just to see how I was doing, even though I really like her. I don't, we don't have that kind of relationship, but real estate agents do. And I think that's a really important thing is to bring that interpersonal part back and add value. Let's talk about online research. You guys are the king of online research.
Yeah, I think in the past, finding an agent was really all about who you knew. Referrals were king, and those referrals from friends and family members are still really important today. But our data is showing that times are changing. And today, an increasing number of buyers are finding their agent online. And I
Mm,
can do a comparison for you.
sure.
If we look at referrals, right, about 1 in 5 buyers and sellers say they rely on referrals from family members and friends to find an agent. We've seen that share fall over the past 7 years. Now, at the same time, more than a third of buyers and sellers now say they found their agent online. So that could be a real estate portal, it could be a search engine, it could be social media. And that share has doubled in the past 7 years. So this is not just a fleeting trend. This is a fundamental shift in how agent relationships begin. And the hiring decision is happening before that first conversation.
Yeah.
Agents who understand this are kind of in a better position to win.
Yeah. So, what would you suggest an agent might do to beef up or make sure that their online presence is what they would want because you're right. Even if it's, I mean, maybe if it's not your best friend, but if it's a friend of your best friend who's referred to you, they're still going to Google you. They're still going to look up your reviews.
Exactly.
They're going to look up your Zillow reviews. They're going to look up your Google reviews. They are also going to see what comes up when they type in your name. Just like, would be on a first date, people do that as well. And so what does Zillow suggest that agents, should do to make sure that when people are researching you, that they ultimately, find good stuff?
Yes, your online presence is your 24/7 storefront, right? It's your
Mhm.
digital storefront. So here's some things you got to be thinking about. I think number one, first impressions are really happening on social media now. Our data shows that nearly half of prospective buyers, 44% of prospective buyers say they're more willing to hire an agent who's got a social media presence. The second thing, your client reviews, your past sales, your bio, it's got to be everywhere online. And it's because buyers and sellers aren't just Googling you. Now they're using, Gemini and ChatGPT. So you need to be findable and you need to have all that stuff get pulled into those AI generated searches.
Yeah.
And then the third thing I think is to demonstrate your value clearly online, right? You want to show your process, you want to show your market knowledge, you want to demonstrate your results, right? I think you just don't want to leave someone guessing what the experience is going to be like working with you. You want to make that very clear upfront.
Yeah, I think that's right. And a lot of agents really sort of ignore that and just assume the referral sort of game is enough, right? Like my clients will tell, and yes, that does work and it does obviously drive leads. But if you don't have this online presence to supplement or to complement that, it's really hard for somebody who hasn't ever met you to feel comfortable. Or maybe you have an Instagram channel or a YouTube channel that also goes a little deeper into sort of who you are and what you're all about. And that can obviously supplement that too. But I think having a good looking website is critical. I don't think you need the home search portal on your site. A lot of agents have, there's a lot of debate about whether that's important. Zillow's already got that covered. You don't really have to do that.
Right.
People
Right.
don't need your site for that. But what they do need your site for, and again, I'm not picking on anyone that has that. We have it on our sites as for our agents as well. We actually think it's cool. But what people really want to see when they go to your site is tell me your story. Who are you? What are you all about? Why should I hire you? Give me the warm and fuzzies and show me competence, and let me, obviously make the decision that way. But you're absolutely right. It's funny. I get referrals from, so we have at our company, we have about 700 agents and we get referrals from those agents. Thankfully, we're so fortunate. Our agents like us and they say, tell other agents, oh, you should talk to DJ. And you would think that those are just easy slam dunks. And sometimes they are. But oftentimes they're like, oh, yeah, I went on your website and I read everything about you guys. It's like, oh, yeah, of course you did. I would do the same thing. So, of course, that's super important. And this is the time, this is the year to just make sure, because again, with AI searching being more and more prevalent. I think the days of Google searching is coming to an end. I really do. I think in 5 years we will not be searching that way. We will just be talking into our phones. I mean, we pretty much are doing that now anyway, but it'll be much more seamless. And AI knows how to search much faster than a human can search, and it can hit a lot more search results. So you want to make sure that your content is super valuable, not only to users but also to AI. And so learn about what AI looks for in content and create that content. And also, AI now scrapes videos too, so it can actually recommend you when people are searching not for you but just for standard content. So yeah, I think that's a great sort of series of suggestions, and always something to keep in mind. I want to talk about Gen Z because this is confusing to me. Oh, it's not confusing to me. I think it's somewhat unfortunate that they're, and look, we know it is not tough. The middle class, it is tough being in the middle class right now. It's tough being Gen Z. Their purchase power isn't quite what some of the previous generations had, and that's unfortunate, and it is a bummer. What we do know for sure is that the average first time home buyer age is going up, and it's going up significantly. And it's a real shame because I don't necessarily think it's an unavoidable thing. I think a lot of younger generations, especially Gen Z, maybe just don't understand the ability that you have to actually accumulate wealth throughout your lifetime with your house. And if you start buying your home later, you lose out on a lot of that opportunity. So yeah, tell us what is Gen Z up to? Are they renting? Are they buying? And what do they want from an agent?
Yeah, what I think was surprising in our data is that we found Gen Z is playing a much bigger part in the market than we kind of anticipated, I think, and that a
Good.
lot of people think. You think about Gen Z as, they're snapping selfies, they're making TikTok dances, they're not buying homes. Well, it turns out they are. They make up 20% of US adults now. They make up 18% of home buyers, 14% of home sellers. And as they age, that share is just gonna go up. The oldest Gen Z right now is 30 years old.
Right.
That kind of blew my mind and made
Ugh,
me feel really
me
old.
too.
But something else that might surprise you is that Gen Z is making 50% more income than baby boomers were at their age,
Ah,
and they have access to the bank of mom and dad, right? 46% of Gen Z buyers are getting a gift or a loan
yes.
from a family member or a friend to buy a home compared to 35% of all buyers. So they're getting some help. It's not all smooth sailing. You touched on it. Affordability, huge deal. This generation is the most likely to be denied a mortgage. A third of all Gen Z buyers or initially denied a mortgage, but then they
Wow.
persist, right? Until they do secure that loan. I think that's something huge about this generation. They're really scrappy and they're really resilient, and they still believe in this American dream of home ownership.
Yeah, I think that is exciting. I'm glad that those numbers are changing because we're seeing the first time home buyer age is now like 39, and it's like it should not be that because again, you're just going to be missing out on appreciation. It's not. And what's so wonderful to hear is that yes, we know that as boomers are retiring, baby boomers are retiring, the largest, there's going to be this gigantic wealth transfer for even the generation prior to that is going to be passing that into the boomer generation, and that's going to be passing down into like the millennials and Gen Zs. And that's where a lot of these down payments come from. And I could not agree with you more. My sister and I were both fortunate enough to be able to get our first places due to our parents being saving, and we wouldn't have been able to do it otherwise. And not everybody gets that luxury, but more people are getting that opportunity. So I think that's a great sort of opportunity for agents right now to consider having those conversations with Gen Z, even the ones that don't think they should be buying or maybe have a negative stigma attached to what home buying, or maybe I can't afford it. Having those conversations about, well, here's how it actually works, and let's talk about renting versus buying, and let's sort of figure out, what the opportunities are. Because I know for sure when I before I bought my first place, which was in I think 2005, somewhere around there, I didn't know that I could purchase. Like I just thought, oh, that's not
Right.
for people. Like that's not for me. I don't have enough money. Well, turns out I did, but I didn't know I did. Right. And my parents were able to help supplement that to make it happen. So as soon as I did some research on my own, nobody helped me. Then I was like, oh, I can do this. But I was too embarrassed to ask. So I think that's an opportunity for agents to really go to that younger generation and say, let's have a conversation about this. Like, you're probably closer than you think. So great opportunities there.
Yeah, and, we see it on Zillow, right?
Mm,
We're looking at user behavior, and Gen Z, they're really active dual shoppers. So
yeah.
they're looking at rentals on Zillow, and they're looking on the for sale side too, and they're kind of toggling back and forth, and ultimately they're just trying to find the best deal,
Mm.
right? So we have all these great tools right now, things like buyability, where you can go online, you plug in some personal financial information. It will show you exactly how much home you can actually afford. And you can do that. You get that number without having to pick up the phone and call a loan officer, which I think is a huge barrier for a lot of Gen Z prospective buyers.
It's intimidating to call a loan officer if you've never talked to one, because they are going to ask you a lot of questions that will
Right.
likely make you squirm. I mean, I've had many loans, and every time I have to do it, I squirm a little bit giving them all of my statements. It always feels a little bit like, taking off my clothes in front of a stranger, and it is not always the greatest feeling. So I love that you guys have tools that allow people to sort of at least slowly step into that realm without feeling so intimidated, because of course it can be. So I love that there are tools that just allow people to get more instant information. And Gen Z is interesting as well, because they're not people that talk on the phone very often, right? That's another
Mhm.
way. So like the way they communicate is different. And yeah, they're doing the TikTok dances, and they're scrolling social media, but they're texting a lot, right? That's probably their primary way of communication with other people interpersonally, when they're not face to face. And that's something that agents really have to sort of wrap their mind around, is you really need to meet the client where they're at. And if you're a phone person and you call Gen Z people, and you will find out real quickly if they're a phone person, and you have to adjust. And it's not easy sometimes. For like, I grew up talking on the phone. I don't know if you did or
Mhm.
not, but I didn't grow up texting. So it just,
Yes.
I still do it, but it's not I would rather pick up the phone most of the time, because I want to have longer form conversations. They like shorter form conversations. So communications, learning those styles are
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah, no, it's sort of that running joke, right? That Gen Z is allergic to the phone. But what we're seeing increasingly across our data is that most buyers and sellers would prefer a text message than a phone call,
Yeah,
right? I think 50% of buyers say that's their preferred method of communication now. Only a third of buyers say that a phone call is their preferred method of communication. I mean, obviously, if you got something bigger to discuss, a phone call is appropriate. But I think if a Gen Z client is texting you, you need to text back, right? Don't
yeah,
pick up the phone and call them. They're not going to answer.
yeah.
And then the other thing with Gen Z is that you want to sound like a human and not like a robot, a chat bot, right? They are all about authenticity. They
Yep.
can sniff out when someone's reading a script or someone's being fake with them, right? So I think it is sort of matching your communication style with theirs.
And I love too that being a realtor is one of those professions that is unlike maybe a financial advisor or an accountant or an attorney, to the, obviously that you can express your own creativity and identity and personality in those professions too, but you're probably more limited. And those professions have a particular association with a style of dress or a style of conversation, and realtors kind of don't really have that. So it's fun when I have people on my show that really are being completely authentic. And maybe that's not sort of even what is a mainstream form of like communication or a style of dress, or and they can like really be themselves and have an incredible career. So I love that with agents. It's probably the profession that you can make the most amount of money being authentically yourself to probably any other. And so that's kind of a cool thing too, because you're right, authenticity is everything, and it's what people want. And the cool part is you just get to be yourself. So it's like, it's actually kind of a win all the way around if you're willing to show up as you are. Let's talk about sellers,
Yeah.
because sellers are the other half of the game. So what are sellers wanting right now? I just sold a property and I gave up that 3% mortgage and nobody was less happy to do it than me. But I was happy to do it because I'm getting married. And of course that makes perfect sense and a good reason to do it. And I upsized. So I doubled my square footage. So I'm really grateful for that. But I also did double my mortgage payment, which is not as much fun. But you know what? It made sense. And the reason why I did it is because there were fewer homes on the market to sell. So my place sold in 2 days.
Mhm.
And it was just it was a very nice
Wow.
condo, but it sold quickly and there were fewer buyers. So I feel like I got my new place at a discount. So it actually worked out perfectly. And I think there's a lot of people sitting on the sidelines who want that 3%. I get it. Like I had it for years. It was the best. And I'm never going to see it again. And oh well, but I got this place at a huge discount as a result. So tell me about what sellers are up to these days.
Yeah, I think we hear from a lot of agents that sellers are still stuck in 2021,
Yeah.
right? They walk into that listing appointment and the seller is expecting that you're going to list their home for sale, that there's going to be multiple offers, a bidding war, is going to sell in 4 days, above ask, just like their neighbor's home did 4 years ago, right? Um, I think that's happening to some extent, but I think today's sellers are actually quite pragmatic. We know that more than half of sellers say that maximizing price is their top priority. Totally understand that. Um, but a third of all sellers are now saying that their top priority is selling within their desired time frame. So that's a bit of a shift, right? I think
Mm.
in today's market, more than anything, sellers want certainty. They want to know that their home's going to sell for a fair price, that it's going to sell within a reasonable time frame, and they want to be able to move on with their lives and move on to their next chapter.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that that's a huge opportunity then for people just to sort of meet sellers where they're at and understanding those needs is really, really critical because that's exactly it. So I agree. And there are opportunities out there. And I think many agents aren't talking to sellers because they're afraid that they're going to be so driven just by the rate change. And really,
Mhm.
still rates are not historically high, right? They're just high compared to the last 5 years because of course they are, because we were at historic lows at that time. So if we really like do the math, I mean, I didn't want to double my rate, but I could still do it. And like that's pretty cool. Like, it's not so high that I couldn't do it. And there's a lot
Right.
of people that are downsizing, boomers. The average age of a seller or a buyer, sorry, a seller right now is between 56 and 59, which is crazy. Like I wouldn't have guessed that.
Mhm.
And that's the majority of people who are selling right now. So it's like this is a forgotten market. People are not reaching out to people that age because they're still working. They're thinking, oh, they're not doing anything. They're not moving, but they are moving because maybe mom and dad might be moving in with them, or maybe they're downsizing. Kids are now out of the house. They're in college. They want to, right size, they call it now, not downsizing. I guess downsizing is a bad word now. We can call it right sizing. But anyway, they're making changes. And this
Yeah.
is a forgotten market. We're always looking younger and thinking those are the only people buying, and they are. But a lot of older people are so this is the and by the way, they have tons of equity in their property.
Mhm.
So they don't even know how much equity they have in their property. There's so much equity. 30% of these people are buying all cash on their next transaction. It's insane. So there
It
are
is.
really cool opportunities out there. And places like Zillow, are great to get this data to the agents to remind everyone because we only know what's in our small little bubble of experience with the contacts we have, and we just think, oh, things are good or bad or whatever based on our experience, and then it's like, oh no, there's all this other data, and it really Zillow is probably the king of this data, and it can expand this view and really, I think, change someone's attitude and mindset very quickly. Whereas sort of the day-to-day work that you deal with your existing sphere might give you a different worldview, and you're like, oh boy, it feels like it's one, it's actually another. And so that's why we're having these conversations. So I very so much appreciate you talking about that information. Let's talk about marketing because there's probably nothing that Zillow does better than marketing, right? You guys have become the number one place that people search online. I mean, there's not even a close second competitor. And it's just insane. So you understand how to drive interaction. You understand what buyers and sellers want. So tell us about adjusting, an agent's marketing and brand positioning in today's market.
Yeah, that's the $1,000,000 question for 2026, right? I think the first thing is to recognize your brand is not just your name or your logo, right? It's you. It's the promise that you're delivering. It's the sum of every single client interaction. It's every online review, every social media post. And building a brand that clients trust really means showing up and showing up consistently and authentically and showing up with really clear values. So, like, what does that look like? I'll speak from experience at Zillow. Our brand is all about making action of home buying, the moving experience a lot more supportive, more transparent, and more empowering for everyone, for buyers, for sellers, for agents, right? And those core values are really at the center of every single decision that we make. And that honestly makes decisions a lot easier. So I think agents should clearly define what are their core values in 2026 and then let those kind of guide every touch point with clients. The second thing, I know we've been talking so much about authenticity and consistency, but that really is the secret to how you build trust. Today's clients want agents who are real, who are relatable, who are reliable, right? And when we're talking about consistency, it's consistency across all of your channels. So it's your website, it's your social media, it's your Zillow profile. All of that reinforces who you are, your professionalism, your brand. It keeps you top of mind. You don't have to be perfect on social media, right? You just have to show up in a real way. These authentic everyday moments and that steady presence is really what builds the brand and builds loyalty over time. The third thing I would say is that take advantage of all the technology, all the tools that are out there right now. They can really amplify your brand. So, your Zillow agent profile is your storefront. Make sure it's up to date, that bio, your sales history. You can add a professional video. You can highlight your social media channels too, right? You can include testimonials, all of that stuff. And then, tools like Showcase, of course, they work and they deliver this unified brand presence across all of your listings. And we have some research on this. We know that agents who are using Showcase on more than half of their listings are winning 30% more clients than non-Showcase agents.
Really?
And
That's great.
yeah, and it really is because those Showcase listings result in more than 10,000 brand impressions in the first 90 days compared to non-Showcase. So these tools work for agents. They help win business, and they put your brand in front of more eyeballs. And then, finally, I'll just put in a plug for data because I love it. I really truly believe that data can be your superpower as an agent. Zillow publishes local market insights all the time to help agents show up as the expert, right? As the most educated person out there. And it's not just every meeting, right? Every listing appointment. Agents are out and about in their communities all the time. And what's the first question that people always ask? They say, "Hey, how's the market? What's happening with the market?" And wouldn't it be great to have that data nugget that you're able to pull out and share and show that you really are that neighborhood expert?
Yeah, that's right. And again, that's what AI can't yet solve for. And maybe someday it can solve for experience. I hope not, but it doesn't today. And this is where the agent comes in and says, "Hey, I can help you make sense of this data. I actually can give you my personal experience based on however many years I've been servicing this particular market." And so I think you're absolutely right. It's getting the data, it's making fun use out of it and giving it to people in a way that's actually valuable to them. And again, they're not getting many calls from their other service providers. I promise you, they're not. Their accountant's not calling them. Like, this is the one opportunity you have to. I mean, if my accountant calls me, I'm going to be scared. Like, there's something's probably bad is happening, right? My financial advisor calls me, it's not going to be good. It's not like he's not going to say, "Hey, did you get like an extra 100 grand that you can just give me to like?" That's not going to be the call. It's going to be like, "You're down a bunch of money and we got to make a change." But he doesn't do that because whatever. But the point is you have this opportunity to call and just get updates in people's lives, give them some data that might help make them a better decision. And also too, having those conversations about why now, even though rates are in the sixes, maybe it's a great time to sell. And why is that? Well, there's fewer buyers out there and there's fewer homes on the market. You could sell your place pretty quick. If you find that perfect place, find it first, and then we'll sell your place, and then we'll make that move. Again, whatever the situation is, you're at least having a conversation and you're creating value. And this is really the key to building those long-term relationships, so that 14 years from now, that agent is remembered and actually called. And it's funny. My parents had a condo in Myrtle Beach. It was like an investment property, and they would use it several times a year, but they would rent it out all the other times. And it took forever to sell it because it was just a bad market at the time. It took like 5 or 6 years. I think it took 5 different agents, and somebody was actually the last agent was really, really good. And afterwards, I kind of remember saying, "Did you guys ever sell that?" And my dad said, "Oh yeah, we finally did." And like the agent was amazing. And I said, just out of curiosity, who was that agent? I mean, I'm in Chicago. It doesn't really matter. But I go, if I ever need to refer something over there, I'll refer to them. And my dad goes, "I have no idea." And this was like 2 months after the closing, right? So it wasn't that my dad is like, he remembers things and he didn't remember. And I was like, if my dad does not remember you after 6 years of trying to sell this property and somebody finally sold it, like, you need to consider that everybody else has so much going on in their life that they're going to forget about you too, not because you're not special, but because you're not out there communicating in a way. And not just, hey, here's my monthly newsletter. Like, you got to do more than that. You got to actually call somebody and prove to them that you care about them and show them that you actually are thinking about them and that you are working for free in between those sales, just to let them know how important they are to you. And you will be rewarded. They will call you back. They will use you if you stay in touch. And again, Amanda Pendleton is our guest and first Emmy Award winner to be on our show. Actually, is that true? No, I think I don't know. I'd have to go back. We've done 700 of these, so I think you're the first. So anyway, we are, whether you're first or the 10th, you're definitely not the 10th. We are so excited that you were taking time away from your busy day in Seattle to help us and our listeners do a little bit better with their clients. And on behalf of our audience, we thank Amanda for coming on here and really just having a lot of great information to share. And we'd love to have you back. And on behalf of Amanda and myself, thank you to everyone who's made it to the end of the show. We love you. We are so grateful for you listening or watching, however you're doing this. And please, as always, the best way that you can help our show is by telling a friend. Think of another agent that could benefit from this conversation. By the way, they all could benefit. So just pass this over to somebody in your office, and we're everywhere podcasts are served. So just look for Keeping It Real. Unfortunately, there's about 20 other podcasts called Keeping It Real, which I should have thought about 7 years ago when I first started, but I didn't. And now I'm stuck with this. But they can find me pretty easily. Just look for the one that says DJ. That's me. Jillian Michaels also has one, so that's not the same one. I think it's about fat loss. But we're very different people, but you can listen to hers as well. But Keeping It Real is easy to find. We're everywhere, and we appreciate you. Thanks to our sponsors for helping keep the show going, and we will see everybody on the next episode. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you so much, DJ. It's great chatting with you.